Hey, I'm Bob from 12th Floor Solutions, and I'm really excited to show you some of the cool stuff we've been working on in Flow. Microsoft Flow has been around for about a year now and really starting to gain some good traction, and we're going to show you how to set one up end to end. This particular flow starts in SharePoint where a user can create a vacation request. Once approved, it goes into a calendar that everyone can see. So let's get started.
Okay, before we start creating the list and the flow, I'm going to show you conceptually what the flow is doing. So first, an item is going to be created by a user, and that's going to act as the request submission. And we'll set up a vacation request list to do this. Once that happens, the flow will kick off, and it will send an approval using the flow approval connector. When the user who's assigned the approval approves it, it will create an item in the vacation calendar where everyone will be able to see it. We're going to do one extra little step, which is we're just going to set the original item in the vacation request list to approved, and that's going to essentially firm up the item so that the original user can see that it's approved and can't change it. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up our lists. So the first list we're going to create is a custom list, which is the vacation time request. And that's where the users are going to input their time to request their vacation. So it's just a standard custom list. The other list we're going to create is the calendar, and that's going to be the public calendar where all of the users can see approved vacation requests. So it's just a calendar, click create, and now you have your two lists created. We're going to go back into the vacation time request, and we're going to create two custom columns. And those columns are going to be the start and end date of the request. Okay, so we'll enter the start date, and this will be a date and time field. We're going to make it date and time so that if you have your vacation halfway through the day, that's totally fine. And we're going to do the same for the end date. So it's going to be a date and time field, and you can enter the date which the vacation ends. Okay, once that's all created, we're going to enable content approval on this list. And the reason is just to make it more official so that once it gets approved, the item is approved and users can see it within the vacation time request if you need it for reporting or any other purpose. But this isn't a required step if you wanted to get started. Okay, now we are going to, once your lists are created, you can see them here, we're going to start the flow. We're going to find the flow application. So I'm just going to type flow, click on it. That's going to load up the dashboard for creating flows. So I'm going to create a new one from a template, and I'm going to do it when an item gets created in SharePoint. So it's going to create an empty dashboard where I can set up a flow that's based on an item that's created in SharePoint. So I know the address, so I'm going to copy it from the browser, and I'm going to paste it into the trigger as the start address for that item. And I'm going to pick the list, which is the vacation time request. Now, once I know what's triggering the flow, I'm going to create an approval step, and that's a step that's not a SharePoint approval at all. It's a separate approval that you could use for all sorts of purposes. So once this step gets created, I can say I can define a title and I can assign it to someone. So you could assign it to anyone dynamically, say if you had another option in your request list, but we're just going to pick one user that will approve the vacation request. And then in the other fields within approval, you can add additional information of where to go when the if the user wants to click to find out more about what they're approving. Okay, so that's the first step. So once the item gets approved, then we can start to do more stuff. Okay, next we're going to create what's going to happen once you approve or reject the approval. So first we have to create a condition step, and that's going to say if the approval gets approved, then we're going to do this, the thing on the left, and if it gets rejected or anything other than approve, it's going to go to the step on the right. So we're interested first in what happens when you approve the workflow, So first, we're just going to set the content approval status on the original item to approve. And that's because we want to make sure that the item is kind of official. So this isn't a required thing if you're just playing around, but it just gives it just rounds out the functionality so that you can change the view settings on the list item to only show what's approved. The end user who's requested it can kind of see it on that side if you wanted to do something else within the content approval process. And then same goes for the rejected side, which is if it isn't approved, we're going to reject, and then they'll be able to see that it was rejected. So you can see here, we're just we're finding the item that was first created. That's the site address, pick the library name. Sometimes you have to type it in because it doesn't always come up. So if you know the name, you can just type it in, or you can go to the site and find it. And then once we have the name, we're going to we know the ID already, and that's the item that was created. So you just enter it there. And then the action, we're going to reject, and then you can add some comments there that it was rejected. So that's just a simple way of changing the content approval on an item. Okay, so we haven't actually created the calendar item yet, but we're going to do that next because once it's been approved, now we can create the item on the calendar side. So we're going to find the action to create a new item within SharePoint. We're going to find the site where the calendar lives. So you can just copy it from another one if it doesn't auto-populate. And then you can see it's not there. So you just type it in and then it should be fine. Okay, so it's loading up all the other properties that are part of the calendar item. So we're going to make the title just a simple title of who created the item, which is basically who requested their vacation, and then just some text behind it. So it would say the user's name and then vacation time. So it's just a nice clean visualization on the calendar. So then start date will map to start date and start time will map to start date and end time will map to end date. They're both date time fields, so we're good. And that should set up our flow. Okay, now that we've finished our flow, let's go ahead and run it. So I'm going to go into the vacation time request and I'm going to click on creating a new item. So in here, creating this item is going to trigger the flow. So a user can put a title in, a start date for the vacation, and an end date. And those are tied into the calendar. We're not actually using title right now, but you could use title. We're definitely using start and end date for this particular flow. So when you click save, that's going to put the item into pending state. That's just the content approval. But what you can do is you can go into the form editor and sometimes you can see it running in here. In this case, it hasn't run and it doesn't show that it's running, but sometimes you might notice that the flows actually run through here. So I'm going to go back to the item and just see if anything's changed. So another way to see if things are running is by going into the dashboard, the flow dashboard, clicking on the flow that you want, and then you can see the run history here. So you can see that it actually did start running 30 seconds ago. I'm going to click on this, and then you're going to see that it actually did stop at the approval step. Sure enough, I got an email come in. I'm going to approve it, and then I just need to confirm the approval. So I'll click confirm, and that's going to move it to the next step. So I'll go back into the flow, and you can see it moved past that step, and the rest completed fairly quickly. So I'll just double check to make sure everything ran. I'll refresh this. The content approval status is approved. And the most important part is that the item was created in the calendar.
So there you have it. A simple little flow using SharePoint in the approval process to create a nice feature for your portal. Flow can be used for a ton of other purposes, but hopefully that gives you enough to get started. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.